Every man is born into a land, a soil, a horizon that shapes the soul before he can speak. For Léon Degrelle, it was Wallonia, its stone cathedrals, its wooded hills, its rivers flowing like veins of memory. And behind it all, the cross, eternal, unyielding, shining through the fog of time. His life would be one of fire, consuming, dazzling, and tragic. And his writings, such as The Burning Souls, are embers of that fire. Memories of home, cries of faith, and prayers of a man both exalted and exiled. Degrelle was born in 1906 in Bouillon, Belgium, a small town on the edge of the Ardennes. His childhood was formed by Catholic ritual and rustic landscapes, by hearth and chapel, by the sturdy traditions of family and faith. He was Jesuit educated, when that meant not merely knowledge but discipline, when faith and reason were still taught as companions. The land of our birth returns to life in our memories. Here it is. A little foliage lights up the facade. 2 blue stone steps. A large vine-encumbered balcony in the gardens. Everything is in its place. Everything has a meaning, a smell, a form. We go to the cupboard. The cupboard. That beautiful, full, serious word because it holds our nourishing bread. So familiar we can navigate it with our eyes closed. This corner smells of tobacco. That one the cat, who always purred in the warmest place. That noise is father rising from the office chair. The halting footstep is mother, who, in the dining room, waters her flowers. These rooms are not merely places to stop. This one is the room above the living room. This one is the room above the office. This one is the room of the little ones, even when they have become men with heavy thoughts. As you can see here, for Degrelle, Homeland was more than just geography. It was sacrament. Each plowed furrow, each chapel candle was part of the eternal order. To lose one's land was not merely exile but crucifixion. This was to be the fate of Degrelle later in life. Here we find the seed of Rexism, a politics not of contracts, constitutions, legalism. No, but instead of hearth, altar, and soil. As a young journalist, Degrelle was sent to Mexico. There he witnessed the Cristero War, where Catholic peasants rose against Marxist persecution. Their cry, Viva Cristo Rey, shook him forever. He returned to Belgium convinced that only a militant Catholic faith could resist the modern world's decay. In 1935, he founded Rex, named after a Catholic publishing house and in honor of Christ the King. Rexism was not merely a party, it was meant as a national revival, a crusade against liberalism, corruption, Marxism, all the ills of the time.
Ils sont là dans leur ministère, protégés par des centaines de gendarmes. Eux, la démocratie!
Degrelle envisioned a corporatist order, families, syndicates, and the state united under Christ and King. He was a Belgian nationalist, rare in its time and still today, for he outwardly sought unity of Flemish and Walloon alike under a Catholic monarchy. This was in contrast to the Belgium of that time, and still today, that was deeply divided. The nation was linguistically split in two between the Dutch-speaking north of Flanders and the French-speaking south of Wallonia, which was the land of Degrelle's birth. In addition to this, there was political instability with established parties losing ground to new socialist and revolutionary movements. Rexism soared suddenly. In the 1936 elections, it won 21 seats in Parliament and 8 in the Senate. Degrelle was seen as a prodigy. Even King Leopold himself allegedly offered him a cabinet seat in a bid for stability. But Degrelle, emboldened, refused. He dreamt of remaking Belgium entirely. Yet his enemies, liberal socialists, even some Catholic hierarchs, which drew up memories of the Cristeros, closed ranks against him for being too extreme, too radical, too militant, too nationalistic, and so on. By 1939, Rexism was shattered at the polls. Degrelle, once a rising star, was now an outcast. The result, however, of this attitude was to push Degrelle and the members of Rex even further away. This was the turning point. Rexism began as Catholic renewal, but vilified, censored, and cast out, Degrelle sought allies beyond Belgium's borders. Italy and Germany had long offered him encouragement, and in the storms of war, he turned fully to them. When the war eventually came around, Belgium declared neutrality. This neutrality was shattered in May 1940 by the German invasion. Under occupation, many within Rex chose open collaboration with the Germans. Degrelle, now aligned with Germany, helped raise the Walloon Legion to fight on the Eastern Front. He served within the unit and went on to become its most visible figure, promoted and publicized by German authorities. Decorated for his service, he was celebrated in German propaganda, with even Hitler allegedly saying, "If I had a son, I would want him to be like Léon Degrelle." Now, even Zoomer historian cast doubt on that quote, so I'm not sure how real that is and how much of that is just sort of the post-war mythos. I saw, dazzled, the great golden fires of my youth arise. Their flames illuminated my land. The crowds made the starry waves of their thousands of faces dance around me. Their eddies existed, but did they really, in fact, exist? Wasn't this all a dream? Did I not dream that 30 years ago, a nation called my name and that on certain days the most distant newspapers of the planet repeated it? As a simple soldier, I would gladly die tomorrow. The humility of my lot in life at the front reconciled me such an outcome. Not having lived as a saint, to die as a soldier's soul would be the most suitable thing. Are my weeks numbered? Then it is best to make the most of these chances to purify our souls. I once dreamed of dying after a long illness, to better prepare myself for the inevitable. But such a death necessarily takes place in an atmosphere of pollution. On the front, our preparation takes place in a feeling of power and the unfolding of the will. I realize how lucky I am. Perhaps I will return alive, more alive than ever before. Either way, this great retreat, which life or death will close, will have been a blessing. I enjoy it freely, fully, like a nourishing and beautiful sun. So as you can see here in this excerpt from The Burning Souls, specifically The Flame and the Ashes, Degrelle is very poetic, and he does have a religious tint to everything. He talks about like preparing for death, how in a long illness, right, you can take Holy Communion and unction and prepare for death through that. But he also says being at the front, being a soldier, rather than being surrounded by the pollution of death from a long illness, that you are sort of very full of virility, very full of, he specifically says, where does it say it? In the unfolding of the will. That almost sounds Nietzschean if you think of like will to power, Wille zur Macht, that sort of thing. And so I think it's important to understand photos survive of him receiving communion at the front, and if I can recall correctly, he was actually pushed very heavily to have a Roman Catholic chaplain, and so his religion was very important to him. And he also partook of communion when he lived in exile as well. So we can see here, Degrelle sees war as a crucible, a place where youth and innocence are forged into fire. The front becomes a theater of trial, where courage, endurance, and devotion illuminate the soul. Again, he says he's prepared for death at any moment. In the snow and smoke of the Eastern Front, sacrifice takes on meaning, and the simple life of a soldier becomes a path to self-discovery and also, in a way, salvation. So because of that, he writes of dying not with fear, but with a sense of humility and purpose, embracing the struggle as a way to purify and elevate himself. The hardships of battle, the cold, and the danger are woven into a vision of growth, each moment a chance to test the will, to feel alive in the intensity of life and death. So to Degrelle, the war is not just a conflict of nations, but a stage for the transformation of the human spirit as well. The flames of youth, the roar of the crowd, the rhythm of marching feet, all become part of a grand, almost sacred narrative where courage, devotion, and the pursuit of ideals shine brightest amid the trials of history. Though, again, I said he saw it not just as a conflict of nations, and I feel like that's sort of downplaying that part of it. So he himself almost certainly saw the battle against, the godless, atheistic communists as a sort of holy crusade. That's definitely how it was promoted in propaganda. So, he did see this conflict among nations as a righteous thing. So, he's not saying, oh, war is good, killing is like, he's not like that. But he is saying that within that, because he still sees it as a righteous fight, but within that fight, that is a vehicle for spiritual transformation, purification, and sort of being full of that will and that power, and that this is being directed for, it is a righteous fight, but it is also purifying for yourself. Also, part of the Degrelle narrative is that when he initially enlisted, he specifically requested to be just a private, and then he goes up and up and up the ranks, and he did obviously have sort of an in a sense, being the leader of the Rex party, but he did work his way up the ranks to a pretty prominent position. In 1943, his Walloon Legion, which was a part of the Wehrmacht, transferred from the Wehrmacht to the Waffen-SS. Suffering is the most wonderful of companions, pathetic and angelic, washing souls of all desire, raising them to the heights they had dreamed of for so long. Defeats, victories, dreams, or material successes pass away, are forgotten. Fires that shine for a moment, sense swept away by a passing wind. By early 1945, Third Reich was collapsing, and the Walloon Legion, which by then was reorganized as the 28th SS Volunteer Grenadier Division Wallonien, was a shattered force. Throughout 1944 and into the final months of the war, the unit had been thrown into a series of desperate defensive battles on the Eastern Front. After suffering heavy losses in the retreat through the Baltics, and during the fighting around Estonia and Pomerania, the remnants of the division were repeatedly reconstituted on paper, but never regained a real combat strength. By the start of 1945, what remained of the Walloon formation was a collection of exhausted survivors, constantly pushed back by the Red Army's offensives, and increasingly cut off from supplies, reinforcements, and any meaningful command structure. As Soviet forces advanced toward Germany's heartland, the Walloon troops were absorbed into larger, hastily assembled SS battle groups, attempting to delay the inevitable. Many were killed or captured in isolated pockets, others dissolved into the chaos of the collapsing front. The destruction of the Walloon Division effectively marked the end of Rex's military project. With his unit gone and the war closing in on Berlin, Degrelle saw the political movement he had built disintegrate. Rex, already weakened, was formally dissolved as the fighting reached Germany itself. The fall of Berlin symbolized the final destruction of the ideological and political framework he had tied to the National Socialist war effort. Escaping south was impossible at this point, so Degrelle fled north, passing through the remnants of German-held territory and eventually reaching Norway. In the final days of the war, he managed to secure passage on a plane bound for Francoist Spain, one of the few places still willing to provide refuge to collaborators and foreign SS personnel, and if you know anything about history, obviously a lot of Germans. Once in Spain, he initially lived in secrecy under assumed names, trying to avoid extradition. Over time, as the immediate pressure faded, he emerged more publicly and began reconstructing his life in exile. Who will suffer? Who will be there near cavalry in these new days of agony? In the desert of time stands the cross. The mundane, shady, or perverse life of men flows on like a dull river. Christ will receive the blows and the thorns. He will collapse to the ground. The wood of the cross will crush his flesh. The hammer will strike great blows against the hard beams. They pierced my hands and my feet. I can count on my bones. What will the world know? His blood will slowly come down on his pale body. His eyes will seek both his Father and our souls. Here, Degrelle writes not as a politician or leader, but almost as a mystic. The crucifixion is eternal, renewed in every age. For him, the defeat mirrored cavalry. Blows, thorns, blood, abandonment. Yet, he insisted that from every crucifixion comes resurrection. Whatever else may be said about him, his soul remained haunted by the cross, convinced that suffering has meaning when born for God. Suffering is what creates meaning. There is no beauty without suffering. Tucked away in my exiled sadness, I can no longer believe in my past itself. Did I live those times or not? Know those passions? Raise those oceans? I walk my terraces. I lean over my roses. I discern the scents. Have I ever been another being, other than this lonely dreamer who vainly clutches at memories like mountain fogs? Wasn't all this something other than a hallucination? I cannot see. Far away, in faded lights, their bodies, as if from a Greco painting, growing thinner and thinner. Did these men, who have faded forever from the horizon, know me? Did they follow me? Did I lead them? Did I exist? After the war, Degrelle was condemned in Belgium, sentenced to death in absentia. He was sheltered by Franco and was able to live in Spain until 1994. In exile, he wrote endlessly, memoirs like The Burning Souls, which I've quoted extensively throughout this, defenses of his choices, and sweeping histories. He never renounced his admiration for Germany and its leader at the time.
Et quand nous voyons ce qu'il y a en face, ce que 30 ans de victoire des autres ont donné, c'est anarchie dans le monde.
And nor did he abandon his Catholic devotion. His household chapel in Spain was a place of daily prayer. He lived as a man cast out of his homeland, but never from his faith. Degrelle's post-war life was long, nearly 50 years in exile. To his enemies, he was a criminal. Mossad in Belgium tried to kidnap and extradite him numerous times. To his admirers, a martyr of Europe. To himself, he remained a son of Wallonia, a soldier of Christ. He never reconciled with Belgium, but he reconciled his choices with his conscience and God. In his writings, we hear not any apology, but conviction that he had fought for Christendom as he understood it, and that the cross remained at the center of it all. A burning soul cannot settle for mediocrity. It is consumed, and in its fire it illuminates. Degrelle's fire scorched him, but his embers still whisper today. His choices were controversial, his path condemned by many, sentenced to death by his own countrymen. Yet in his words remain truths older than politics. That man is nothing without God, that exile is crucifixion, and that even in the ashes there is hope of resurrection. For me, my fire is dead. My life has plunged into the abyss, has been submerged by the black dawn that has smothered everything. But I still want to believe that these impulses, which animated the action of a man already dead in the eyes of most, though he has the misfortune to still live for himself, will still be able to join spiritually from here to there in the world anxious hearts. I remember 3 words that I had deciphered one day on a tomb of black marble, there in Dam in Flanders, in a church of my lost homeland. Et si mortis urit, even dead it burns. May these pages, the last fleeting fire of what I was, burn for a moment, warm for a moment, souls haunted by the passion of giving and believing in spite of everything, in spite of the assurances of the corrupt and the cynics, despite the sad bitter taste that leaves us, with the memory of our falls, the awareness of our misery, and the immense field of moral ruins of a world that is certain to have no more of salvation, which prides itself on it, and which nevertheless must be saved, must more than ever be saved.
Alors nous autres, au moins, nous avons rêvé à quelque chose de grandiose, et nous n'avons qu'un désir, et c'est que cet esprit-là renaisse, et avec mes forces jusqu'au dernier moment de mon existence, je lutterai pour cela, pour ce qui fut notre combat et notre martyre, soit un jour la résurrection.